All right, happy second opening day, everybody. Nah, just kidding. It's the second half of the year, though. Welcome in the Concrete Jungle, a New York baseball podcast. Paul Russo alongside me. As always, Kyle Evans, man behind the machine. Nate Sharman handling all the fun stuff technology-wise for us today. Coming to you guys live from FingerLakes1.com office, third floor, North Park Building in Seneca Falls. Hopefully everybody is staying cool, staying hydrated. Hopefully everybody has been doing that. It's been a hot one. Doesn't look like there's end in sight. That's the way I prefer it, but, you know. I wouldn't mind a 75-degree day at this point, but how's everybody doing today? Thursday, we're almost to the weekend.
Yeah, doing pretty well. Just ready for the second half to start. All-Star game was all right. Wasn't the best.
Yeah.
Home run derby, I enjoyed it, but
Yeah, we'll touch on those, obviously, a little bit. Nate's big winner on the golf course yesterday. How you feeling?
Only thing I have to say about the heat is you don't have to shovel it, Paul.
That's
That's all I got to say.
That's true. But yeah, this is weird. I mentioned, right, this episode of the podcast, it's gonna be fun to talk about different things than we usually talk about, but probably will be like one of our shorter-ish ones that we've ever done too at the same token. So we'll jump right in. We'll talk about the All-Star game a little bit of the Home Run Derby. Obviously, the American League taking their 9th in a row, 3-2 over to the National League in Los Angeles on Tuesday night. Giancarlo Stanton, obviously, big 2-run home run, takes home the Ted Williams MVP award. But, other than that, I think the main headlines, and, I beg to differ with the way you phrased it, Kyle, a little bit. I didn't think it was a boring All-Star game or a lackluster one or a rough one or anything like that. I thought it was pretty cool. We finally got, albeit in an All-Star game, we finally got a lot of the things that I think a lot of fans have been begging for in a baseball game to have. We had an umpire cam on the home plate umpire. We had a lot of the players actually willing to be mic'd up in a situation. Even in past All-Star games, it's kind of been a tooth pulling among a lot of people, but each half inning pretty much had somebody mic'd up. I think there was a couple where you just couldn't because obviously you're trying to get different people pinned and stuff like that. And in that situation, that half inning, a couple of them, one we had David Ortiz kind of running around a little bit. I know for me, not to go, I know Nate will probably make fun of me here, but NASCAR does it with Michael Waltrip. He kind of had some Michael Waltrip vibes running around the dugouts there for a quick minute. But I agree. Maybe gameplay wise, it wasn't as good, but I don't think any of the really main core four sports at this point have great all-star games anyway in that sense. So to me, it wasn't, I guess, a big deal, but I think it was really great because, like I said, we finally had things that as fans we've been clamoring for a number of years, and they went ahead and at least attempted and to me capitalized on that opportunity.
yeah, I agree. Take away, though, the mic'd up stuff, I think the game would be very boring for fans. I mean, a 3-2 score, not a lot of offense. It was cool to see, obviously, Nestor Cortez and Jose Trevino mic'd up together. That was actually one of my favorite moments of the game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the MLB All-Star Game is among the best out of the four major sports. Obviously, we know how the NFL is with their Pro Bowl. My God, is that bad? But
To the point that apparently they're willing to not bring it back at this point.
yeah, please don't. But yeah, it wasn't the worst. I do like the mic'd up. They should obviously keep doing that moving forward. It was cool to see Stanton, get a nice home run there, and it was a nice night.
I think you had all of America rooting for a tied 3-3 score in the 9th inning to see another home run derby at the end
Yeah,
of the
I
game.
think
that would be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I know we discussed, I know you weren't here for Kyle, obviously, on Tuesday in the office, but me, Nate, Caleb a little bit. We were kind of having a nice little back and forth about how I think we preferred it to either be some sort of like 20-21 slugfest or have it be where it could be a tied ball game and what would have been the 10th inning heading to what would have been the 10th inning to have the home run derby style knockout more or less to get the victory. So I think it was pretty cool too. I know obviously for us we're baseball people. We know a lot of these guys' names anyway coming up. Another just key part I thought was really cool that the nation got introduced to Julio Rodriguez with the home run derby. Obviously, I know Seattle Mariner, not a Yankee, not a Met. Didn't even come remotely close to visiting Rochester or Syracuse at any point. But well, that's going to be a name that you'll be hearing for a while, hopefully. Just absolutely great job, and I ended up kind of pole vaulting him to being one of the more I'd call appreciated players from the mainly Dodger crowd on Tuesday night.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch. I was actually hoping he would win it.
Yeah.
But obviously, I don't mind Soto at all. It was good to see him win it too.
Right.
Can we
Yeah.
talk about how I gave out Soto on the podcast last week or Monday?
Yeah, you
Gave him
did.
out 6-1. I took him 5.5 to 1, but a win's a win.
All right. Well, he's surprising, right? And obviously, he'll be a name anyway that we discuss in a few minutes when we get to kind of how we'd prefer to see who we would prefer to see the Yankees and Mets go after in the trade deadline. And obviously, his name is more than the front runner at this point
He's not going to be a Yankee.
for different
We
reasons.
need to stop that.
Right, but for obvious reasons, we need to discuss. Soto's always an interesting, experience to me because. Look, a guy like Schwarber, right, jumps out to Kyle Schwarber, who would probably do well in a home run derby because he has the uppercut style swing. It's a power swing, right? Soto, for as big of a guy he is, and this is a little bit of a difference between him and, say, like Aaron Judge. Judge kind of has that lower uppercut style swing. Soto does a really good job, and he's a contact hitter who I would love to coach because he literally has done my biggest philosophy, what I tell is this. Swing the bat and the ball will take care of the rest. He swings for contact. He just has enough natural power. That thing just goes. So kudos to Nate. You were on it. I didn't necessarily trust it because, home run derby contact swings usually don't do all that well, but in this situation it did. So takes care of, I think, pretty much that. So let's jump in we'll start with the Yankees and the Mets, obviously, and what we kind of hope see with them. We'll start with the Yankees. There's going to be some overlap here, I think, with some of the names that we might be bringing up and stuff like that. Obviously, you don't think the Yankees will go after Juan Soto. I think they'll kind of kick the tires a little bit.
I think they'll definitely call, but
yeah. Of the two New York teams, I definitely think probably the Mets would go after him more. Obviously, we'll touch on that in a second when we get to them.
it would just be foolish for them to trade him.
Right. I think the Yankees the core still do need an outfielder. I think obviously for them personally, from the team perspective, they probably are going to move on from the Royals in Benintendi and Michael Taylor, who were two of the targets that they had. Obviously, I know they only have, I think is it 6 games left in Toronto, or is it less than that?
I think it's 3. Somebody said 6, but they were wrong.
But either way, you have one series left there. Certainly potential still of seeing them in the postseason at some point.
They did ask about Intendi if he would get vaccinated if he was traded to a contender.
Yeah,
And obviously he wouldn't answer that. But
of course. Well, he saw what happened with Whit Merrifield when he answered that, so I don't blame him for no commenting that. So that kind of has put the Yankees now in a spot to go after, say, a guy like Ian Happ of the Cubs, who I wouldn't say he's necessarily having a career year. I think he's having a very good year, probably a year that he's been kind of waiting to have in a breakout sense. Happ, one of the top Cub prospects, really, that got underwritten in a way during the Cubs runs a few years ago, only because of the names that they already kind of had up. And obviously the Cubs have another player we'll discuss when we get to the Mets more or less with that, because I do think the Yankees are more or less probably out on Wilson Contreras at the moment. I think the Yankees' focus is going to be more outfield and then pitching depth as opposed to probably going after a catcher. I think they're probably pretty content with what they got with Higashioka and obviously Jose Trevino at this point. I could be wrong. Obviously, we've seen deals in the past where the Yankees kind of make some more or less surprising moves at the deadline in a sense, whether it's bringing in a guy like, say, Lance Berkman. I know it's digging way back in the back pocket to bring up that name, but, stuff like that where I don't know if they'll necessarily do the Wilson Contreras move at this point, as opposed to just focusing on what they know that they need to get at this point, which would, to me, is obviously outfield help and pitching help.
yeah, I agree with that. I don't think I don't think they'll mess with the catcher situation. But even if they did, I guess they're done with Higashioka. I mean, he has no options.
Right.
So they're pretty much going to move on from him if they do make a trade. I just don't see that happening. But yeah, outfield definitely, starting pitching, maybe a reliever because you don't know how Zach Britton's going to be if he comes back. But they definitely have moves to make.
And it's kind of interesting at this point because, I think this is important for the Mets, but we saw, trust me, the Yankees aren't going to go out and do this, but the Diamondbacks DFA Dallas Keuchel last night, and it's the Nationals that made it known that, you're going to see Patrick Corbin be moved probably in their minds with Juan Soto in some way, shape, or form. The reason why I bring up the Diamondbacks is they have an all-star in Joe Mantiply, who has already actually pitched for the Yankees. So we call Yankee legend, right? I think he could be a name that we see pop up on the Yankee radar. Has had a really good year. This is probably career year really for him, which is interesting. I know the Diamondbacks are now kind of falling back on not contending this year, in all honesty. The NL West got weird for a quick second for a couple weeks. You had the Rockies making another push at one point and stuff like that. And the Rockies are another team where I see the Yankees could probably at least make an inquiry on a guy like, say, like a Daniel Bard out of the bullpen there. He's done really well. Going back to the Cubs point, I know we mentioned it last week with the Mets, but a guy like Michael Givens, who's having a really good year, obviously former Yankee, twice over David Robertson's having a good year. Certainly guys that I'd be willing to bet the Cubs would at least listen and take offers on.
Yeah, I just honestly can't wait. What are we, like 12 days away?
August 3rd is the new trade deadline, hard deadline as they're calling it now. So we are, the beauty of the notes today is that they're all on our computer so I can check. We are technically 13 days.
Okay.
Depending upon how you want to look at it. So
Yeah.
a lot to be done, obviously, with that in 13 days. For the Yankees, expectations the rest of the year, I don't want to say they're fluid in essence. I think the way I think a lot of us, myself included, at one point kind of had them, as in a doomsday situation at one point, and where we are now, it's pretty good. Obviously, 64 and 28, first in the AL East. I don't know necessarily. It's weird. I don't want them to play 500 ball the rest of the way. I don't think they will. I don't think they get to the record mark of 116 or anything like that. I think that's just a bit too tough in today's day and age to do. But certainly, and this would result in them having to lose 34 games this year to only go 162 on the season, 162 losses. I don't think it will be that. But I'm guessing I don't think they'll go on the exact torrid run that they were on at one point. I'm more probably guess that they land somewhere in about the 105-ish area, give or take.
Yeah, I predicted the other day 107, so they'd have to go 42 and 27, which is doable.
Right, 15 games above 500. That's more than good. So looking ahead for the Yankees, also for them, no news is good news. They don't have anything outright to report of anything noteworthy of new-wise.
Except for Domingo Germán. I expect him to come back any day now.
Yeah, and they still have not made an official, at least of time of obviously going live right now and recording, there's nothing official yet. Doubleheader today in Houston to make up for some games. I mentioned, right, their schedule got really weird and wonky. And then they head up to Baltimore to take on the 500 and last place in the AL East, Baltimore Orioles. 46 and 46 for them. Pesky Birds. Game 1 today on Yes at 1:10. Game 2 also on Yes at 6:40. Friday night, 7:05 on Amazon Prime Video for the first in Baltimore. And then Saturday and Sunday, both on Yes. 7:05 first pitch on Saturday. And Sunday, a 1:35 first pitch. Tough to get a gauge. Teams are slowly rolling out who their probable pitchers are going to be for the games ahead at this point. I know the Yankees, when I did the notes a little bit ago, had nobody listed. I know before we went live, you mentioned Jordan Montgomery's name has popped up on the radar for at least one of the games today.
Yep, and we do have all of the Mets starters for the next series. We'll bring that up a little bit later.
Right. So again, tough to kind of get a gauge early out of the gate. I'm more going to split double. So they're going to split the doubleheader today, and then take 2 of 3 against Baltimore. Um, Baltimore's just been pesky enough all year against teams that they'll get one against the Yankees, I think. So, at least going into the off day on Monday, I'd be pretty satisfied with a 3-2 start out of the gate. To me, against obviously the second best team in the American League, and a really pesky Baltimore bunch.
I don't know. I'm gonna sound like a bad fan right now, but for real, like they just don't do well in Houston. I really do think the Astros take both today.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean you're right though.
Like
I
I'm
mean
just
they
being
don't.
real. Like yeah, I want them to win both,
Right.
but the Astros pitching always shuts them down, especially in Houston. And it's a doubleheader, first game out of the break. Don't know what kind of team
I
you're gonna
believe
get.
they're throwing. I think it's Garcia and Urquidy. I can't remember which games exactly are which,
Yeah,
but
I think that's it. Yep. So two tough guys right there.
you're right though. I mean they don't do well at Minute Maid for some reason.
Yeah.
Um,
And then for Baltimore, I'd say 2 of 3.
yeah.
So
All right, let's move on to the Mets. We'll touch on their news and notes first because there's only a couple, and for them, I guess it's pretty noteworthy given what we're going to talk about with them. Jacob deGrom was scheduled for a sim game a few days ago, postponed due to a sore right shoulder. The plan is to throw that postponed session today. Just being cautious. I don't think there's anything too much to worry about exactly in the grand scheme of things. And then first baseman Dom Smith was placed on the 10-day injured list, retroactive to July 17th. Dom Smith is a name that has obviously come up in trade talks multiple times over. Could he be a name for the Mets to send away in a package? Certainly possible.
why do the Mets want Daniel Volga? How do you say it?
Vogelbach, yeah. So we'll touch on that in just a second because I do want to tackle the Juan Soto elephant in the room with the Mets. The gauge I've gotten from Mets fans that I've kind of have talked to, it's a mixed bag of emotion, kind of. They want Soto in about the worst way, but at the same token, they don't want to mortgage the rest of the guys coming up through the system on it. I think one of the nice things with the Cohen ownership, with Mets fans is one is transparency, but two, he's been really wise. He hasn't meddled. He's let the front office do their thing, and the farm system is back in a good spot where you could make the case that collectively it hasn't been since sometime in the mid 2000s when David Wright and Jose Reyes kind of came up. Probably too far back in the grand scheme of things, but they're in a really good spot. Obviously, guys like, and again, this is a name that I've heard brought up that they're going to be more than willing to trade depending upon the situation, is Francisco Alvarez, top catching prospect in baseball, the Mets' top prospect, currently in Syracuse. It will be interesting there. I don't know necessarily if the Nationals would want Alvarez in a deal for Soto. Obviously, they just picked up Keibert Ruiz last year in a deal with the Dodgers with the Scherzer and Trey Turner deal. And their catching prospects themselves are pretty good. Obviously, we've seen a guy like Trace Barea in Rochester, and a couple other guys there that are on their higher end list of prospects. So I don't know how they would feel about that. I think a lot of it kind of comes down to this. I don't know if the Mets would hold on to Vogelbach if they pick him up. I think he'd probably be a piece to move in the three-way deal. And to go back to the Diamondbacks for just a quick second, DFA and Keuchel, I think in a lot of ways it's kind of a dump in a way to kind of take out a contract like Patrick Corbin's in a sense, to get a third team involved in a deal to kind of pawn off. No contender is going to take on Patrick Corbin at this point. I don't see it. Do I think he's still a good pitcher and in the right situation can maybe not get back to what he was, but certainly thrive? Yeah, I do. He's a guy that I wanted the Yankees to sign, 3 years ago when he was a free agent. So, I don't know what happened. The Nationals are a bit of a mess right now, but obviously, personally speaking, I wouldn't mortgage the future on Juan Soto if I'm the Mets, knowing that in a year and a half I can go ahead and just throw all the money in the world at him anyway. But that being said, you'd have to at least kick the tires still if you're the Mets, just like the Yankees are going to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see the Nationals trading him to a team that's in their division unless their offer blew them away and like offered more than what they expected to get for Soto. I just don't see him going to the Mets.
Right.
The Yankees, obviously, they'll do their work and try to offer something, but I just don't see that happening either. I honestly don't know where he's headed, but I don't think it's either of the New York teams.
Well,
Maybe somewhere on the West Coast.
Neither do I. I'm convinced he'll be a Padre. In all honesty.
Yeah.
Um.
Oh, we just got word Domingo Germán will start game 2.
Okay. So how about that? Sticking with the Mets, obviously another spot of emphasis for them is going to be catcher. The health of their catchers all year has just been across the board awful for the most part, production-wise awful. Again, this is where a name like Wilson Contreras will pop up. I think I mentioned this, once a couple weeks ago. I think the Mets should seriously consider getting in contact with the Royals about Salvador Perez, waiving no trade clause, and also you could kind of tag along one of their outfield people to bolster the outfield a little bit. Obviously, Mets pitching, they're going to need some help. I'm guessing they'll probably take a run at the same players as the Yankees would in theory. Whether that be a Bard, Mantiply, who knows there. For both teams, I did mention, right, I've been saying all year that kind of some of the sellers we'd expect at the deadline, like a Baltimore, right, they aren't going to be sellers this year. I don't necessarily think Baltimore would be a buyer, but they're just too good, in my mind, to kind of disrupt core pieces to get prospects back. That being said, look, I don't think any of us really expected, in essence, the Pirates to kind of be now all of a sudden sitting in third place in the NL Central. I know they're a bit back, which is why the Vogelbach conversation is interesting, but, Nate, be happy. I don't think your Pirates are just going to be outright sellers at the deadline. I don't see it.
Yeah, there's definitely some future there too, which just kind of makes them exciting. They'd probably end up trading like guys like Vogelbach, but
Well, I like Vogelbach, yeah, but what I'm
right.
saying,
But like their core, I don't.
you're not going to see Mitch Keller
or Brian Reynolds.
You're not going to see Brubaker.
Right.
Guys who a team like the Mets or Yankees would take runs on, you're not going to see.
No, I would be surprised. I wouldn't. I don't know. I would be surprised if they went with Brubaker, but I would think they keep Keller around.
Personally speaking, I don't even think they trade Bednar, their closer.
I think he means too much for that team. Like they've put out some really cool social media clips.
He's a Pittsburgh native, but
was that the guy that threw 103 the other night? There was some guy. I thought there was a Pirate. Is he a reliever?
Yeah.
Yeah, he threw 103.
He's a big boy. He's Western Pennsylvania built.
Yep.
Yeah, Jared Carrabis from DraftKings was like, oh my God, 103. I was like, wow.
So, but that's what I mean, right? The teams that we kind of expected to kind of be, I guess, really bad just aren't that. It's just not the case. So I think, maybe it does take an Alvarez, at least in the case of the Mets, right? Maybe it does need to be like a Volpe for the Yankees to get a deal done. I don't think, personally speaking, either team does that. I think they got enough auxiliary prospects, as I call them at this point, to get deals done. Kind of sounds weird calling a guy like Peraza over Oswald, Oswald Perez, an auxiliary prospect, right? Same thing with, say, like a Brett Beatty or somebody like that for the Mets, but I don't think you trade away those top guys.
Yeah,
but you can't get Soto without trading him.
Well, no.
And I know you mentioned they have catcher prospects, but you would think a deal would be centered around him.
Around Alvarez?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's their best prospect.
But at the same token, like I said, if you're the Mets or the Yankees, right, just wait. Just wait the year and a half. You know what I mean? You're better off doing that in that situation, to me anyway.
Is it 2024?
Yes. He's arbitration eligible this offseason and then free agent next year. It's the way pretty much Judge's deal was structured in a way, as I bounce my hat off the arm. All right, let's look ahead for the Mets here. A little bit, obviously, second half. More or less not true 500 ball the past few weeks, but they've been borderline close, obviously. They've been bit by the injury bug a little bit the past month or so. Things haven't gotten good, but their hot start really has put them in a really great spot the rest of the way. Again, kind of like the Yankees. I don't necessarily think that they go 100 wins and 62 losses the rest of the way. At least for the Mets, that puts them at, I think, slightly below 500 if I do the math right the rest of the way. I just don't see that. I do think they come up in the kind of like the Yankee territory, maybe not quite 105, but certainly somewhere in the 100 to 105 win total category. And again, for the Mets, I think that's what they need to do to sustain and keep everybody else at arm's length away for the NL East.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're probably a 100-win team. I'm going to say 100 right on the dot, actually. Um, we'll see how they do in the second half. Like I said, I still think the Braves are going to be there all along. But I'm going to say they're going to finish with 100 wins and they'll win the division by 5 games.
Right. For the Mets, obviously don't play today. There's only really a handful of teams really doing the doubleheader to make up games today. For the Mets, 3 games in Queens against San Diego this weekend. A team that they could be seeing very well in the postseason at some point. Padres are second in the NL West, 10 games back at 52 and 42. Friday night, 7:10 first pitch on SNY. Saturday, 7:10 first pitch on your local Picks affiliate. And then Sunday Night Baseball, 7:08 on ESPN for that game. Should be a really good series. I feel I don't know how to make heads or tails of this really with no true pitching matchups known. That being said, you did bring up the fact that we do have some inclination now at this point of where the Mets are at least thinking.
Yep, I got it right here. So they're gonna go with Scherzer on Friday,
All right.
Bassett on Saturday, and Carrasco Sunday.
So yeah, that's pretty much about as close to your big 3 at this point, outside of maybe Bassett, Stan, Taijuan Walker. I like the Mets going 2-for-1 in this series. I'm gonna go with the Mets taking it 2 out of 3.
I like a nice sweep. for the
Really?
Mets.
All right. I think it depends. I think I saw Musgrove's pitching one of the games for the Padres, so and I'll tell you what, the awards this year I do not envy not having a vote on. I mean, you got a lot of guys deserving. Musgrove's very deserving of a National League Cy Young getting that. So, all right, before we head out of here, let's take a look at Rochester and Syracuse down on the farm. Much like the MLB, although they didn't have the All-Star game this year, they did have a little bit of a break. So, both teams have 3 games this weekend, but minor league baseball is certainly different than the big leagues, right, in terms of projecting out and what you'd like to see out of a team for the second half of a season. Obviously, you can't outright trade with other teams, but teams, certainly can drop players and you can sign them and stuff like that. I think in a lot of ways for both teams, both just need to have, and again, this is tough because the big league club dictates a lot of times what happens. But I think as long as both teams have some roster continuity here, which will be tough, obviously, I can see both teams really doing well. The International League East, we mentioned it, right? Super tight still, all things considered. So I think anything can really happen to either one of these 2 teams. But I think for both the Red Wings and the S-Mets, as long as they have some roster continuity, I think they both can have the possibility to go really far in the second half.
Yeah, like you said, obviously the rosters are going to be moving a little bit. Some guys could even be, part of a trade.
Right.
I don't know. I think the Red Wings, they're going to end up rolling a little more than they were in the first half. I think they're gonna get going. The Mets, I think, are going to cool off a little bit. They've been winning a lot more games lately. I just think they're going to cool off a bit.
A couple news and notes for Rochester. Right-hand pitcher Corey Abbott was optioned back down from Washington. And then for the Syracuse Mets, center fielder Ender Inciarte elected free agency after being outrighted from the big league club after being designated for assignment last week. So it'd be interesting to kind of see where Ender ends up. Obviously started the year in the Yankees affiliate in Scranton, kind of it's the beauty at least of being a tenured big league player, kind of have the ability to kind of pick and choose at this point what you can do in that sense. But it was going to be tough for him, I think, to find a spot at Syracuse kind of fit in. The outfield for Syracuse has really been a nice, I think, an underwritten bright spot. Travis Blankenhorn's played some out there, but it's kind of turned into Nick Plummer having, the spot out there. Khalil Lee really has gotten going the past few weeks. And then, Terrence Gore's actually had, since being, called really, called up's not the right term. Obviously, the Mets signed him as a free agent and started out, because he got a late jump down at the complex league and got set up at Syracuse. But it's really gotten going since he's gotten the call up to Syracuse. So tough to find a foothold there. Potentially for him to kind of get things going anyway. So certainly understandable. But like I said, I think that's more of a kudos to the outfield core of the Mets more than anything else.
Yeah, and he obviously doesn't want to sit in AAA. That's kind of why he asked for a release from the Yankees. And I don't know. I think maybe eventually he'll find a spot, but he doesn't want to be in AAA.
Right.
You can't blame him as a veteran player.
Rochester, 3 games at Buffalo Friday through Sunday, and Syracuse 3 games at Worcester against the Red Sox Friday through Sunday as well. Obviously, usually, right, minor leagues have been having the week-long series, but with the break, they're just doing 3 games. And then both clubs are back home starting again next week for a week-long homestand, which will be nice to see. I know none of us have been to a game lately, so hopefully maybe we can try and get up to one at some point next week, but who knows, remains to be seen. All right, I think that pretty much wraps up the show for today. Like I mentioned, probably the shortest one we really have ever done. But look, when there's not a super ton to talk about, it is what it is. But much like the big leaguers, nice little reset of a mini break for us anyway. And we'll be right back to it on Monday.
I feel very mentally rested, Paul.
I hate that term. Any fun stuff going on the weekend for you boys?
Not too much. Just probably hanging out watching some games, and that's about it.
Nice. Nate, big plans?
Not too much. I would assume some golf will be in my future, as it usually is this time of year.
I'll be sending you good vibes from PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
Oh, that's right. You're going there.
Just a little drop on that one. So.
Oh, I hope you come back with some gifts, Paul.
I think I'll be able to assist in that.
I'd love to hear it.
So, but yeah, I really look forward to that. I mean, obviously, I know, right? This is I know I mentioned it from the top, right? It's a obviously New York focused baseball podcast, but PNC Park that's up there.
It's the top 1 park in the MLB.
It's pretty much been rated 1 and 2 for the past, I think, decade, give or take. So,
Got to get there soon.
You'd love it. I know, like, you're a baseball guy, Kyle. You'd love it. I recommend, no matter what, your first game, try and pick a spot down near one of the dugouts so you can actually have a view of the skyline in the background for baseball, for the game. Fantastic. I know for me, the games that we're doing this weekend will be in right and left field, our seats, but when I went down for the first time last year, we were down behind the Pirates, or the first base dugout, so when they were playing the Mets, but for sure, the first game you do, you have to get it to where you have the view of everything in the background. It's
For sure.
It's second to none. Second to none. All right. Anyway, now I can do the official outro, I guess. Like, share, big thing. Help us out. Subscribe. I really appreciate it if you all did that. Unsubscribe, resubscribe, review, re-review. Can't watch us live on YouTube. Catch up anytime there. And all pretty much at this point major podcasting platforms. I don't think there's really any that I don't think we're technically not on anymore, but either way, have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk again Monday. Enjoy some baseball, and we'll see you then.